Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's a time you had a gut feeling, ignored it, and in the end ended up being right about it? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
My husband has a lot of health problems. Insomnia is a regular occurrence. One night he couldn't sleep, he couldn't get comfortable, had nausea, he had pain. These weren't uncommon symptoms for him, but it seemed a little worse than usual. I knew the heart attack symptoms can be subtle and often mistaken for heartburn or stomach upset. I told him this and suggested we go to the hospital to play it safe. He said no. Months later, he had some testing done, and we learned he'd had a silent heart attack. They couldn't give us a date, but the time frame matched up with that night he couldn't sleep. I should have put my foot down and made him go to the hospital. If you're reading this, learn the symptoms of heart attack and of a stroke. Anytime you're concerned about the possibility of a heart attack or stroke, get it checked out by a healthcare professional. I lost contact with my dad around 10. When I was 15, he contacted me and wanted to meet up to have a better relationship and get involved in my life. 2 weeks before our agreed time, I had a bad feeling something wasn't right with him, and that would be the last time I spoke to him. He died 3 days later. A week before my husband's dad passed, we went out to dinner with him, and I told my husband that night that something was off, and I had a bad feeling about his dad. It was brushed off as him being exhausted from a long day moving. Both dads passed from heart attacks. I highly recommend anyone or everyone to read or listen to The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. He goes into great detail about why we have gut feelings and how oftentimes we're picking up on things we aren't totally aware of. It's a fantastic book that makes you have a better appreciation for those gut feelings. When I was a teenager, I was riding in the car with some friends. That driver was speeding a little and acting like an idiot in general. We stopped so he could switch out a CD. This was in the 90s. I had a bad feeling he was going to eventually wreck the car and someone would die or get hurt badly. I almost got out of the car. I didn't though. We did end up wrecking less than 20 minutes later. I came close to severing an artery in my neck when we crashed. Everyone else's injuries were fairly minor, including the driver. His reckless actions caused the accident. I wish I could have trusted my gut instinct.
Have you ever had a feeling like this as well? Specifically about a car? I did, and I actually acted on it, and the Jeep ended up flipping over. Weird.
When I was around 15, my dad was working in a different state with a friend of his for some extra income. I remember one night I woke up out of a dead sleep and everything in my body was telling me, call your dad, now. So I did, even though it was like 2 a.m. He didn't answer. I put my phone down and was slowly starting to wake up and tried to convince myself he was probably asleep and I was just being weird, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Something that I can't explain was begging me to keep trying, so I did. By the 5th time, my stomach was so tied up in knots, I thought I was going to puke, but then he picked up and the first words out of his mouth were, "Christ, honey, can you hear me?" I said yes and told him I was worried about him and asked if he was okay, and he said, "No, not really, but I need to call you back." He hung up before I could say another word, and that's when I went and woke my mom up. I told her, "I think something's happened to Dad." My dad finally called back and told us how he and his friend gravely misjudged how sharp a turn was, and they both had just climbed back up a small ravine and were walking all over the place trying to get signal to call for help when my call came through. They were pretty banged up, but nothing life-threatening. Only spent a couple of days in the hospital before my dad decided he'd had enough and took a bus back home. My dad still talks about how when he heard the tires leave the road and saw the tops of the trees rushing up towards the windshield, he thought they were dead, and getting to hear my voice on the phone was the most beautiful thing he's ever heard in his life. My mom still doesn't understand how I knew to call him, and neither do I. Fortunately, I've never had another experience like that again, and I don't really want to, if I'm being honest. I tell my mom that whatever it was that woke me up, I hope it picks someone else next time. My ex-husband cheating on me multiple times. My stomach was in knots, heart racing, and I knew deep down that he had cheated. He swore he didn't and lied so well, and I let it go. I had proof of 3. I don't know how many more.
If I had a nickel for every time a friend, male or female, told me they had a gut feeling about their spouse cheating and then were right, I could probably buy 2 things from the dollar menu.
In undergrad, my sister and I lived in a house my parents bought, and we had roommates. My sister had gotten a new guy that was moving in after summer holidays. I met him the day he moved in. I was upstairs, met him, shook his hand, went down to the basement suite, called my mom and told her there's no way I would have let that guy move in. She asked me why, and I just said I had a bad feeling about him. He was in the house 2 months before we evicted him for many reasons. Police had to get involved. It was messy. Fast forward a few months and we'd go back from Christmas holiday and the house had been completely trashed. We told the cops right away we thought it was him. They said they knew him well. The insurance claim was $160,000. We lived in a hotel for 3 months while they rebuilt the house. The police genuinely thought he'd tried to kill us. He ended up confessing when he was in treatment, but got off due to temporary insanity caused by methamphetamines. Knew in my gut that my dog was in imminent danger, was searching for him but couldn't see him, and was taking myself out of trusting my feelings because things an ex had told me about babying our dog. I asked the person I was with at the time, "Do you see pickies?" He looked in the truck mirror, sputtered "Coyote," and we both bailed from the vehicle we were parked in. I've never run so fast in my life trying to chase that coyote to get my boy back, to no avail. When I called my ex to tell him our dog had passed, he told me he had a terrible feeling the day before that something was wrong with Pix and I, but felt weird calling to tell me this, as we already separated for almost 2 years. My mom started experiencing excruciating indigestion and heartburn. It got to the point that almost everything she ate disagreed with her. She reassured us that everything was okay, and we took her word for it because she was always proactive with health issues in the past. One night, after a particularly bad episode, I broke down to my fiance, expressing that I was terrified my mom had cancer. She'd had a history of it. She got tested a month or so later and was diagnosed with stomach cancer. I'd lived with a constant fear that it would rear its ugly head again, and it did. F cancer. When I was a kid, my mom and I were going to a friend's house for a play date. I did not want to leave the house. I wanted to bring my favorite things because I knew they weren't safe at home. She wouldn't let me. We went to the play date, and when we came home, the entire house was on fire. We lost 99% of our stuff. I met a dude named Six and instantly knew he would play a role in my life. I just wasn't sure how. There was a flash of danger, but I ignored it because the setting was safe and he was attractive. Let's be real. I let my guard down because of that. Stupid. Anyhow, our chance meeting turned into a semi-sexually charged, although not acted upon, friendship, smoking buddy type relationship. He moved in even, sleeping on my couch. On the surface, things were great. We had so much fun together. He was incredibly helpful to my healing. I had been widowed a year before this and was struggling with extreme isolation. Having him around helped ease me back into talking to people and being social again. But there would be times that we'd be smoking and I would suddenly feel so effing scared of him, as if I was in the presence of the devil or something for seemingly no reason at all. I'd brush it off because he wasn't doing or saying anything wrong. It was just me being high, right? I can specifically recall 5 times that I had damn near had a panic attack, feeling like I was in the presence of evil. So I was scared of him that I couldn't move, frozen in fear, while he was just watching TV or playing video games. One time, when we had company and everyone was laughing, but on the inside I was terrified of him. I always talked myself out of believing my gut. I figured I was just bugging from being high or something. I ignored the warnings. 6 months into it, he nearly killed me, broke my leg, and held me captive for 2 days until I escaped. Then a neighbor came and shot him in the chest, hip, and leg. He survived, but ended up getting sentenced to 12 years in prison, served 3, and on this past Christmas Eve, I found out he'd made parole and will be out soon. Not me, but my significant other gets the most unbelievably accurate and intuitive gut feelings. At first I was like, nah, you're overthinking it. But she'd always get this super specific gut feeling about things that always turn out to be right. What made it worse is she's literally the worst I told you so type, but she's so effing always right about everything. I've learned to listen to her gut at all costs. In middle school, my dog was barking a storm one morning in our backyard around our storage room. My parents told me to go check it out, but I had a feeling something was up, and I didn't want to be late walking to school. Shortly after I got there, the school goes into immediate lockdown with everyone sheltering in place. Apparently, there was a dead body with a bullet wound found in a car nearby park, and the suspect was still at large. Eventually, the shelter in place is lifted and the school day goes on like normal. On walking back home, as I turn the last corner with a block to go to my house, I see a whole squad of police cars pulled up around my house. I frantically sprint down the block and find my backyard swarming with police officers rummaging through all our boxes and junk from our storage room. Apparently, the murder suspect was hiding out in our storage room and was caught after someone reported seeing him jump our fence. The police were still at our house the whole day, searching for the gun. If I'd gone over and checked out what the dog was barking at, who knows what would have happened. P.S. The gun was later found on someone's roof. P.P.S. My mom decided not to trouble the officers with putting all our boxes and junk back in the garage and had me and my dad clean up. Thanks, Mom. P.P.P.S. R.I.P. Fifi for being on the lookout. You were missed. My mom was a crazy hippie. I moved out at 16 and was eventually able to establish a close but cautious relationship with her. At this point, she was living on a boat in the Florida Keys. I loved her dearly, but she suffered from addictions and was in a relationship that was terribly abusive. I started having nightmares about her boyfriend calling me. In the dreams, he would tell me she fell off the boat and they couldn't find her. My gut told me I couldn't be the one to save her. She was a grown woman making her choices. I decided to go no contact again, but I kept putting off the conversation. I'd do it after her birthday. 2 days before her birthday, I got the call. She fell into the ocean while intoxicated, and her body wasn't found until the next morning. I was visiting family in California, LA area. I was walking home from a newly opened thrift store near my grandparents' house. At that time, I was with my older sister, who a week or two prior had my second nephew. I started to get the feeling that at some point we were going to get hit by something. I wasn't exactly sure what, but I had that feeling. I kept pushing it off since around that area, and especially at that time, there may have been maybe 5 cars going down both ways of the street. We were just about to round a corner to get back on the street by my grandparents when I felt like I honestly needed to puke from how bad of a feeling I got. I ended up pushing my sister and my nephews away towards the wall of the house on the corner, and almost immediately I got clipped by a car that had gotten T-boned while speeding. Luckily, my nephews and my sister were all right, but I needed surgery on my leg and a portion of my hip.